right, people, we're going to have some fun today with some really cool amplifiers. So the theme of today's video is the rectifier is a copy of a Soldano SLO, right? I mean, that's what the stories are. So they basically took the amp design that Mike Soldano had made for the SLO and then made it their own with the rectifier. I don't know the details behind that story, also not in a technical sense. However, today I just want to figure out, like, if the rectifier is based on the Soldano, how similar do they really sound? So, and then you can ask yourself, to what extent does it really matter that this amplifier, you know, inspired the rectifier and a bunch of other amplifiers, at least in terms of, you know, how it's made and the schematics and everything. All right. So the amps of choice today are the Mesa Boogie Single Rectifier Series 1 and my Soldano SLO-30. Now, I know this is not an original Soldano. They probably sounded a little bit different when Mike was still building them himself. I did hear that they revoiced the amps slightly when they moved over to BAD to make them sound better with V30s. This sounds really good with V30s. But it still has that SLO sound and that Soldano magic. It sounds so good. And this is the earliest rectifier that I've ever owned. And this is probably going to sound the closest to an early 2-channel dual rectifier. I only have a 3-channel early 2000s dual rectifier. This is older, so this is going to sound closer to that old, more tight rectifier sound. It's not going to sound exactly the same, probably, but it's the closest that I have. Okay? Now, I love both these amplifiers. They sound really awesome. So we're just going to have some fun and see how close or different they really sound. Okay? For this video, I'm holding my Infinia Guitars series. Love this beautiful, beautiful blue beast. Amazing guitar. Look at the back. Ooh, that's nice. I'm going into my pedal board. Don't know if I'm going to use it. I'm using it for the Zuda noise gate right now. And then into the KHE Audio Electronics 4x2 amp cab selector. And then I have the Soldano SLO-30 and the rectifier in the loops. Rectifier is loop 1 and the SLO-30 is loop 2. That is going into my Grossmann Fatbox 1x12 ISO cab, in which I've loaded up my trusty Celestion V30, mic'd up with 2 SM57s and 1 MD421. All right. So what you heard in the intro was the single rectifier on the red channel, the modern mode. My favorite rectifier mode with all the rectifiers. It sounds nice, scooped, modern, fizzy, chunky. Let's take another listen. So yeah, this certainly is a very tight sounding rectifier. A lot of rectifiers sound much more loose and flubby in the low end, but this is just, yeah, chef's kiss, if you ask me. Love this amp so much. Yeah, I have my favorite settings dialed in for this amp. So I'm on the red channel with the modern mode, because we also have a vintage mode. We can try that later as well. I have presence dialed up quite a bit. So let's say 3 o'clock. Let me see. Yeah, almost at 3 o'clock. Lowered the bass a little bit to 11-ish. Mids at around 12:30. Treble at noon. And gain at around 3 o'clock or so. So with this amplifier, I'm getting a lot of the brightness from the presence control. Take a listen. So this is the current position. And when I start to lower it, you'll hear it going darker. You can also brighten up the amp by using the treble control instead of the presence control. Let's try that. However, I prefer using the presence control for the brightness. On this amp anyway, with my dual rectifier, I prefer it the opposite way, funny enough. Anyway, let's put the EQ controls, so the regular EQ controls, the 3-band EQ, to noon. Let's see how that sounds. Not bad. And let's compare that to the SLO-30 on the overdrive channel, so the high gain channel. Let's put the EQ controls to noon there as well. I have the presence turned up a little bit to open it up. You know, the presence controls and all these amps just react differently. With my SLO-100R, for example, the rack mount version of the SLO-100, I have to crank it up almost all the way to reach the same level of brightness. Depth, because this does have a depth control, I love it, is at noon right now. Okay, so let's start with the rectifier and then switch over to the Soldano and take a listen. Back to the rectifier. And back to the Soldano. So, my initial response to hearing those differences is that the Soldano has more meat in the mids, right? Whereas the rectifier is much more scooped and sizzly sounding. What we can do, just for fun, is see what happens if we go to the rectifier and crank the mids up and see what that does, okay? It's a lot more meaty in the mids. Sounds a bit closer. Let's compare. So again, rectifier. Soldano. There's a really nice sort of sag and weight to the SLO-30 that is just really pleasant and really unique. Maybe it's not going to transfer to the video, but you know, for me, playing in the room right now, it's definitely there. It feels really nice under the fingers. Let's compare the low-end chug as it tweaks right now between the two amps. So again, SLO-30. Rectifier. I'm going to have to turn the level of the rectifier down a little bit. All right, so the rectifier still is kind of sizzly, and the Soldano still is a bit more smooth up top. Let's see if we can do some more compensating. Okay, so let's go back to the SLO and let's add some presence. So this is another one of those cases where, you know, at the final two notches, a lot happens. So you can make it sound pretty bright. Let's also scoop out the mids a little bit on the SLO and also crank the treble a little bit. Man, love this amplifier so much. And this is my favorite Soldano for a reason. Okay. All right, let's go back to the rectifier. I like them both. This one is definitely more thrashy sounding, and this one is just so thick and rich. I hope it's coming across on video. Let me know in the comments, definitely. But yeah, they don't sound identical. That's for sure. You could probably tweak them a little bit more. Let's add some more mids on the Recto and maybe add a little bit more treble and back off the presence a touch. Back to the Soldano. Whew, I'm having so much fun here. This sounds so awesome. Let's go back and crank the level on the rectifier a little bit to compensate. Soldano. Yeah, it's a little bit hard always to get the levels to be precisely the same level with these live comparisons, but so bear with me. Back to the Soldano. Yeah, so with the modern mode on the red channel and the overdrive channels compared, you know, the meat and thickness and richness of the mids of the SLO-30, that's really hard to beat. But the thrashy character of the single rectifier is really cool for metal and stuff. It's just more scooped and sizzly, so it might be based on this amplifier or on a previous version of this amplifier. But so far, they're not giving me the same vibe, if you know what I mean. So what I'd like to do now on the rectifier is go to the vintage mode and see how that sounds, okay? So let's switch over to vintage. It immediately darkens up the amp, so let's compensate a little bit by boosting the level and the presence as well. Backing off the mids and adding some treble. It's still kind of dark. I've cranked up the presence all the way now on the rectifier. It does seem to be a little bit more Soldano-y. I've added some treble. Let's compare the levels. Similar-ish. Let's add some bass on the Soldano and some depth as well. Rectifier. Let's add a little bit more treble. Some gain. And the Soldano. It's so much fun to me to just chug on the low strings. If you're not into that, sorry. So that is pretty interesting, right? Again, they don't sound the same to me. Yeah, there's so much richness to this sound. And maybe it's because of the fact that this is the single rectifier. I doubt it, though. There's some magic going... Magic. I can hear people sighing like... There's some magic going on with the Soldano. But I also really like the rawness and filth of the rectifier here. I think the vintage mode does sound a bit closer to the Soldano, though. Just for fun, we can also try comparing the clean channels. Yay, clean tones! So what I'm going to do is switch to the clean mode on channel 1. The channel switching switch on the rectifier is on the back. So let me adjust that. All right, so the rectifier is on the clean channel right now. That's pushed a little bit. Let's clean it up and put the EQ a little bit more to neutral. Presence is cranked up quite a bit. It's a good clean tone right there. Let's do the same thing on the Soldano. So I'm going to the clean channel, bright on, normal channel. Let's see what happens. Back to the rectifier. Yeah, so immediately the rectifier sounds more scooped once again. Let's add some mids and let's subtract some mids and treble as well from the Soldano. This is the SLO. And back to the rectifier. Cool. Yeah, pretty different. I don't think that the Soldano, at least to me, is known for its beautiful cleans. It's a little bit pokey in the mids, if you know what I mean. It's a fine clean channel, but I do prefer the scooped nature of and the sort of sparkly nature of the clean tone of the rectifier here. But that's just personal preference, right? So to conclude, even though the rectifier is based on the SLO, they both sound pretty different. So then you can ask yourself, to what extent does it really matter that they ripped off Soldano? You know, in terms of tone, how much does it matter really? You know, in terms of like intellectual property and everything, that's a different story. Let me know your thoughts regarding that in the comments, of course. I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. I know that a lot of amp designs that I have behind me here are, you know, based on certain amps. A lot of them are based on Soldano. So is that a bad thing? I don't know. With pedals, the same thing. I mean, how many Tube Screamer clones do we have? And how do we feel about that? I'd love to know your thoughts. In any case, this was a really fun comparison. I was expecting them to not sound the same, obviously. But I just need an excuse to play through both of these amplifiers again because I love them both for different reasons. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, please hit the like and subscribe buttons as that really helps the channel out. If you want to support this channel, you can get something in my affiliate links for Thomann or Sweetwater, like a Soldano SLO-30 or Astro or whatever, or a Mesa Boogie amp. That would really help the channel out at no additional cost for you guys. And also be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching and hope to see you soon. Cheers.